way we call it apeaila. We take it from the rear part, flank part of the animal.
When you come cowboy, the kaula ili is very important for cowboys. It's very hard to make one kaula ili. We used to take good care of them. Even nights we have them in our bedrooms. And you live in a cellar room like this, you have to hang where the rat don't get in.
Mamua o ko lo koko, Espanol, pa mi mako. Grandma said before you tutus came, Grandpa dem one no haru, kanu, uala, palai, pumpkin and potato, and the Grandma dem is to kawale. Kawale just means ride bareback. Kauli ho. Them the one will teach Grandpa them how to ride. Yeah. That's how she told me. She know her grand-aunties was Spanish. Actually, our great-grandmas was the one who introduced Kawale to ride horses bareback.
Unfortunately, very little is known of the Mexicans that did come to teach Hawaiian because at that time they were not record keepers, you know. All their stories and their lore was preserved by word of mouth. Nothing written down.
Yes. Grandma, she olelo to me, so she talked to me.
There's quite a great amount of Spanish influence in the songs of the monarchy period, 19th century. The monarchy was very much aware of the Spanish and Mexican heritage. Viliukalani included Spanish words in her texts. The cowboy tradition also did this, and one of the very famous songs was Adios que Aloha by Prince Leleo Hoku. The idea of slack key, that is open tunings for guitar, was something that was found already both in Spain and in Mexico. Vaqueros came from the Veracruz area, which is famous for falsetto singing. Spanish influence extended also to a way of playing the instrument, that is, an open tuning for guitar. The distinctive musical styles of the Veracruz tradition are singing.
How do you do your tuning to slack key?
Hey, Uncle Steve. Every old Hana got their own tuning.
And it's a secret.
Every form of work has its own vocabulary, and now these Hawaiians wasted no time in inventing theirs. Tradition holds that the word pañuelo comes from pañola, which comes from Hispaniola, meaning Spain or Spanish related. Others say it derives from the Spanish pañuelo, or handkerchief, something the Mexican cowboys often wore around their necks. Others believe the name comes directly from the Hawaiian language.
To us who lived this life of ranching, the word means ha, to hold firmly, and niolo, to sway gracefully like a branch from the solid trunk of a tree.
Hawaiians called it ho'ohui pipi to round up cattle, and soon Mexican carts were carrying thousands of hides, barrels of salt meat, lumber, food, and rum. Long before the indigenous peoples of America's West had lost their lands and lives in the Indian Wars, native Hawaiians had suffered tragic losses from imported diseases. The king's cattle roamed the highlands, and commerce was reshaping many of the old ways away from the ecologically balanced ahupua'a, the traditional Hawaiian land unit, which extended from the mountaintops to the sea. Centuries-old aquaculture and irrigation work were becoming a thing of the past. Even the mulberry plant used to make the tapa cloth was no longer being cultivated. Instead, it was replaced by calico, or cotton calico fabric, brought by the missionaries. It was a time when waves of revolution swept across Western Europe. America was adding new states, and the great American West faced a war with Mexico, then found itself caught up in a gold rush. Meanwhile, commerce between Latin America and Hawaii escalated. Spanish-American gold and silver coins were the common form of exchange in the Hawaiian kingdom. To replace moldy flour that arrived from Boston, thousands of barrels of Chilean flour were traded for Hawaiian cowhides. In later years, Hawaiian sugarcane would supply Peru with cuttings to begin its sugar industry. Cattle trade continued to link the island kingdom to the world, as demand from 600 ships a year was transforming traditional Hawaii into a cattleman's dream. The slopes of Mauna Kea were dotted with 10,000 cattle, and the harbor below at Kauai High was a small village with a few sparse coconut trees lining the shore. But in 1 year, 50 ships docked for provisions and carried off 1,500 barrels of salt beef at $12 per barrel, sweet potatoes, pork, beans, hides, goatskins, tallow, 22,000 pounds of wool. Entrepreneurs like William French saw great promise in open lands of the island. With the king's permission, French formed a ranch and trading business, employing former bullock hunters John Palmer Parker and Jack Purdy. Business boomed, but the monarch controlled the land and the cattle. More and more Western mercantilists wanted their own property rights, their own land, their own cattle. Hawaiians did not have a concept of private property in the Western sense. Land was Papahanaumoku, Mother Earth, Kumuhonua, Kumui'o, Hawaii, Hawaii'ea, Hawaii Ka'ainano. The idea that it could be bought and sold was the antithesis to Hawaiian thinking. Foreigners pressured the king to change the system to one more like Western real estate. In 1845, an event called the Great Mahele. Mahele means division. The Hawaiian monarchy established a system of private property. The majority of land went to the kings and his chiefs. The commoners received about 26,000 acres. A Western economy of imported and exported goods began to replace the traditional way of life Hawaiians had taken from the land and the sea. It was believed the Great Mahele would allow the Maka'ainana, the commoners, to own their own land. But instead of them returning to their taro farms, the Mahele left native people dispossessed of the very key to their culture, their land, the Aina. It was a loss from which the native Hawaiians have yet to recover. Without land, Hawaiians migrated to the towns, and non-Hawaiians with money formed large tracts of privately owned land. Foreigners married Hawaiian women with dowries of a few acres. Others purchased, traded, or received land grants from the monarchy. Private ranches were formed, some of which still exist today. John Palmer Parker turned his wife's lands into Parker Ranch, which would become one of the largest privately owned ranches in America.
Waimea, an elevated country where snow and soft winds from the sea convert cold vapors into refreshing showers. Mrs. Kenway was the first I met of the mixed races. I have seldom met a lady possessed of more natural refinement. Englishmen came to welcome me to the mountains. These gentlemen were not young. Like most earlier European inhabitants, many years settled in these islands, they were sailors who had forsaken the sea for the easier life on shore. Some Chileans among them, from whom they learned the use of the lasso, and are now very expert.
Meanwhile, battles for California's independence led many California merchants to send their wives and children to Hawaii for safety. Other merchants like French, Janion, Green, Luzon, and Brewer began companies, some of which still exist today.
Hawaiian bulls have been shipped from Honolulu to China in hopes Hawaiian cattle may be exported to other countries.
The Friend, July 1st, 1843. 10,686 hides were exported at $2 each. Manley Hopkins reports that this year, sales were 577,341 pounds of hides, 252 barrels of beef, 716 calf skins, 104 head of cattle. 10,686 hides were exported at $2 each. The whole of these plains were covered with a thick wood. Now, hardly a tree is seen for miles, almost entirely affected by the cattle.
Trade winds bring clouds as to suggest the fate of Pompeii, parched earth and dust blowing day after day. I have emptied quarts of it from my bed cover at night. It pours in so thickly that in minutes it is impossible to distinguish the color of the furniture.
Dear Mr. Richards, can nothing be done to prevent wild cattle being led through our streets? We can never send a child on an errand, our females are afraid to walk, and men cannot go safely. The cattle break loose and sweep the streets at their pleasure. No place is safe. I hope you will bring the matter before the rulers.
Long before tourism became the dominant influence in Hawaii's economy, the cattle trade was shaping Hawaii's economy and environment. In 1859, oil was discovered in Pennsylvania, and the need for whale oil disappeared as it was replaced with Pennsylvania crude. The number of whaling vessels calling in Hawaii dropped sharply. With it went the demand for beef and other provisions. By the time the Civil War began, sugar exports began to soar, for now the North was cut off from sugar of the Confederacy. When 32 ships of the whaling fleet were lost in an early Arctic freeze in 1871, whaling in Hawaii was dead. But the days of cattle and the paniolo were far from over.
They are a strange race, these natives, amazingly unselfish and hospitable. To the wayfarer who visits, they freely offer their horses, food, and beds. If a Kanaka, who has starved 2 days, gets a hold of $1, he will spend it for poi, and then bring his friends to help him devour it. Horses are plentiful everywhere here in the Sandwich Islands. No Kanaka is without one.
As one chapter in Hawaiian history was closing, another was about to begin.
The imported cowboys have now disappeared, and in their place has sprung up a class of equally as skillful Hawaiian mountaineers.
I ho'okahi pauku o ka molelo Hawaii e ho'opauan ai ka mea e ho'omakaana ho.
Randy, what may make you come, cowboy?
Well, when I was young, I always loved horses. My dad was a trainer, and I In my life, as my dad, I like to be like him. I always like to be like him. He taught me the whole works right up till I was 15. I worked for a ranch. He put me into the ranch, so they made me polo trainer, train polo ponies. My dad was my boss.
When I started on the ranch, working the breaking bad, young horses take a mocha. Mocha is in the forest or down to the ocean. Throw them in the salt water, and then swim out. Yeah, it's big help for the hoof. Yeah.
One thing in the ocean, they cannot buck you off, they cannot kick you. Because the water, they cannot kick in the ocean, so when you get them in the ocean, give them all the works. You give them the works. You know.
That's why Hawaiians train in the ocean?
Yeah.
Not only in the ocean, we used to go up in the swamps like that.
Got good terrains, and yet we got rough terrain, different ranches you go to.
You know the lava flow? Oh, is the smooth one. Okay, is the sharp ones.
In my lifestyle, horses get killed. I mean, I've seen lolos, you know. Guys are on hand, they think they know how.
Yeah.
They come out, they rope, they don't know where they're looking. They just rope blind. They think they're seeing an arena. Hey, boy, you know the trees, boy.
In the arena is different. Outside open country, it's different. Yeah.
So different cowboy world.
Right.
Yeah. If you're a paniola, you gotta really get up and do that. Where you going? What terrain? What are you gonna do?
On the morning of March 27, 1868, bright light was observed on Mauna Loa, which proved to be the beginning of the most disastrous outbreak, which defies description and has no parallel in the memory, the history, or traditions of the Hawaiian Islands.
On that afternoon, Mr. Harbottle was driving cattle across the hill when suddenly the earth shook and a great detonation was heard behind him.
Horses and cattle turned round involuntarily. The atmosphere was red and black. We saw a burst from the mountain. An avalanche of red earth rushed down, swallowing up everything in its way. Trees, houses, cattle, horses, goats, and men.
There was no escape. The torrent of earth shaken by the volcanic convulsion instantaneously buried a village with inhabitants and 600 head of cattle.
The fright of men and animals, scenes of terror I've never witnessed before. Streams ran mud, the streets cracked open, an occurrence as much out of character in Hilo as it would be in New York. More than 300 shocks were counted, nearly every stone wall and house demolished in an instant.
I was going cross lots with my father to visit Lyman's tannery when the ground began to heave. All the horses and dogs were running Mauka.
Immediately after, an immense tidal wave swept the coast, destroyed much property, and a number of lives.
Last came the most spectacular of all phenomena. A shower of ashes and pumice covered many miles. Then the flow of lava from Mauna Loa.
By now, the Hawaiian kingdom had transformed itself into a constitutional monarchy.